Welcome to Solutions with Courtney Anderson. I'm Courtney Anderson, the host, and today we are bringing you episode 233, the 233rd episode of Solutions with Courtney Anderson. And this show is part of the Joyful Art of Business series, and that is one of our series. It's also one of our fundamental principle in all of our programs, the idea that when we're making our assessment and decisions in our lives, we do not use just one solitary metric. We do not ask ourselves, well, how much money do I make, or how prestigious is my job? We don't do those things. What we do is we use more of a holistic approach, and we are vigilant to monitor how we feel. Because if we are in a prolonged and sustained state of misery, at some point, the diminished returns of how much money we make and what other people think of us, how prestigious or important our job appears to be to other people, has less weight. Because we all know our shared humanity is full of cautionary tales of people who did not heed this fundamental principle, and we look from the outside and we're shocked, we're stunned. We think, well, how could somebody, that successful or that powerful or that educated or that, well known? How could they be so unhappy? And then maybe perhaps make decisions that hurt themselves or hurt other people. And that's what we are vigilant, focused, and avoiding in that entire series and fundamental principles. So when we practice our joyful art of business, we have a show today that I am just beside myself. I'm beside myself because this show, this episode, this 233rd episode of this show is one that strikes at the heart of our entire purpose in these programs. And so what I ask when you go to CourtneyAnderson.com, which is our central website, when you look through our materials, and I'll frequently mention a couple of things throughout our different programs, and one of them is this concept of surpassing your goals. I ask the question all over the website and a lot of our materials, how can I help you surpass your goals, right? How can I be part of that process? Because to me, that's why we're here. It's for us to collaborate, to partnership, to share knowledge, to support each other, and to strategize and then execute a plan so that you surpass your goals. Simultaneously, I'm doing the same thing, working to surpass my goals. And continuously, the whole time, you and I are monitoring, how am I feeling? How's this working for me? Because sometimes we'll start out thinking that something is our goal, and then along the way to that goal, we'll realize that really isn't kind of what I want. Now that I think about it, that's probably not going to make me that happy. It's one of those things when you're in school, especially when you go to college for your first undergraduate degree. A lot of people go through this, right? I was like that. So I went into college, and I was absolutely determined. Initially, I wanted to be a veterinarian, which, I love animals. So that makes sense, right? And I love science. And then I got sort of through my first couple of courses, and I realized I do love animals and I love science, but I don't necessarily know that being a veterinarian would have made me as happy, as content as the path I've chosen. And so I switched my major. I just switched, right? So I didn't end up going to veterinary school. I didn't go to medical school, which was another thing I thought about. Thought, well, I love science. Maybe I just need to work with humans, right? Or conduct research. And so that's what we do. That's what we do. So here we are. The specific show today that I said has me beside myself is to be successful. Be specific. To be successful, be specific. That's it. I love it. I love it. The shorter, the better in terms of titles. Also, in addition to the fact that it's concise, we love it because this is one of those things that comes up over and over and over again with organizations that I'm working with, obviously doing strategic leadership with individuals that I'm working with, doing strategic planning for anything in the academic world, if I'm with a student in a mentoring career strategy session with somebody that I'm one-on-one doing consulting and coaching with, for sometimes my volunteer tasks, right? Over and over again, I'll ask people, what's your goal? And I'll ask them, what's your strategy? In other words, where are you going and how are you going to get there, right? And it is imperative that we understand the first part of this, which is, where are we going? So again, all the time in our material and our programs that we're doing here, I'll ask people, right? I ask you, right? I want to help you surpass your goal. What's the goal? We can't surpass it unless we know what it is, right? It's like running a race, and when you know where the end of the race is, because if often in an athletic event, they'll have a line, like a rope, a little ribbon, right? That literally it's the end of the race. It's measured. So you'll know, right? This is it. You measured it out. This is it. Also, it's like a visual, reminder, in some ways it's a physical reminder as you kind of cross that finish line. Yay! Okay? I can't figure out if I've surpassed it if I'm not even know what it is. And this is the number one thing that prevents people from surpassing, from meeting, or from even moving. And what I mean by moving, of course, is just sort of getting going in life. Obviously, one of my areas of what I do professionally is motivate organizations, right? Because we can strategize from here until the end of time as we know it. The thing I always or try to endeavor to mention with the strategy is the execution of it, because the strategy without execution it's pretty and it's nice, but we're not doing anything. And the challenge, though, is even with strategy and even with an execution plan of attack, you have to be motivated. You have to move. You have to do stuff. Now, depending on what your plan is, what you're working on, you may have to just do things with your mind. You may have to do things with your finger by typing something, or texting something, or drawing, or writing, or making something, or move physically, touching something. You may have to speak. You may have to listen. You may have to physically move and get up and do something, maybe with your body. But there have to be movement. And so that's what the motivation part of so much of, obviously, what my practice is trying to understand what is it that's stopping us from doing that. And one of the huge obstacles, again, in all of the areas of all the things I do professionally, is that people just I was about to say they don't even define where it is that we're going, but that's not completely accurate. So let's dive into the points of the show. And so what we've been doing here in some shows is using my idea that I came up with, where I'm using what I call a stone of solutions. Of course, a stone is a unit of measurement, roughly equal to 14 pounds in the U.S. System. So a stone is 14 items, right? So we're using 14 points. 14 content issues. And our Stone of Solutions, of course, it's on CourtneyAnderson.com. Every one of CourtneyAnderson.com shows that we do. This is, of course, 233rd episode of this version of the program. We have a companion version of the program, which is not just this audio, which is what this is. That's why this is the talk show, sort of audio podcast or radio version. It's just the audio part disseminated around the world. We have a companion show where it's audio and, hold up, visual. So for those of you who, for whatever reason, prefer that, then that's our other program. And so those programs, we have a library on CourtneyAnderson.com, and we will be launching additional series on it moving forward on a schedule. But as you can imagine, the logistics with the video is more substantial than just the audio. But we want both. And then for those of you who just love being and we can together share knowledge. And of course, I'm always out around the world giving speeches and corporate education training programs and events, live events. And we're also launching and moving forward with our online version of those. So we'll have some online workshops and seminars. So there's lots of different modalities. The key, of course, as we move through these different programs, I ask that you go ahead and bookmark CourtneyAnderson.com and then view it as a library or a repository, an archive where you're going to come back and whenever you feel you've got the time, go back through, look through those different areas that we have, our different series and shows. So when you go to the site, of course, there are microsites within CourtneyAnderson.com for all of these shows. This version, the video version, the live events, the blog, the article. I mean, that's how it's hundreds and hundreds of pages. We're soon to be closing in on over 1,000 pages of content on the website. So, yay! And as I said a few minutes ago, I stopped myself a little bit and I was saying, oh, it's the fundamental problem or challenge. People don't have specificity because they don't know. And then I said, wait a minute. And then I started talking about our Stone of Solutions, because here's the deal. Okay, when you go to the microsite on CourtneyAnderson.com, just type in episode 233. Boom, there you go. There's a site just for this show. Okay. Here are a couple of points I'm going to make at the outset of our Stone of Solutions, right? These are the 14 sort of highlights. If you don't know specifically what you want, who does? I'm going to repeat that. If you don't know specifically what you want, who does? Right? Truncated version of that. If not you, then who? I mean, it's like, it's your mind. You are you, and you're the only entity that we understand to be human inside of you. So come on. Which brings me to my second Stone of Solutions. Point 2, I know you know what you specifically want. I know you know what you specifically want. I just said it. I just did. Yes, I did. I did say it. I know you know. I know you know. Oh, yes, I do know. And that's why earlier I wanted to stop myself, because I was saying, well, people don't get what they want in terms of surpassing their goals because they don't know. And that's not true. I don't buy it. And that's what this is a sticking point. I've mentioned, over the last, oh man, I'm in my second decade in most of my professional areas, right? So practicing a lawyer, I've been doing that since 1998. Being a college professor, being a consultant and corporate trainer and keynote speaker, coach. I've been doing all of these different things for a while now, relative to how long I've been alive. And so I've had enough experience, right, with hundreds of different organizations around the world, with thousands of people that I've worked with in audiences, and thousands and thousands of people in all the other different areas as I've met, either doing as a lawyer or professor. So I've been doing this, applied. And I know you know what you specifically want. I also know when I say that people get angry. And this is where I get pushback. So I've mentioned that I have done and continue to do very limited. You can imagine, because of the scheduling issues and just also my own resources. I do very limited individual coaching sessions with people who are incredibly committed to their own goals and self-discipline and enthusiastic, that I think I can be helpful. I don't put my time into endeavors or individuals who don't even really care themselves, right? So I don't just sort of say, well, sign up and there we go. Anyone that signs up, I'll coach. That's not accurate, because I can't. A lot of people who say they want help, when we get to this point where I make the point that I know they know, I know they know I know, right? I know they know I know. They know what they specifically want. They get mad. I don't know what I want. If I knew what I wanted, I wouldn't ask for a coach. If I knew what I wanted, I wouldn't ask for a lawyer. If I knew what I wouldn't ask to talk to my professor. If I knew what I wanted, I wouldn't ask for a consultant. If I, come on. Hey, look, hey. Okay. On the show notes, I make a couple, obviously, of other points, including my Stone of Solutions, including don't lie to me and don't lie to yourself. inside of your brilliant mind, and yes, you are brilliant. Are we all equally brilliant? Are we all Einstein? Are we all the most gifted athlete in the history of the universe, and academic and philosopher? Maybe some of you are. I'm not. I can tell you right now. I have very few areas where I'm even moderately competent. But are we brilliant in some ways? Yes. I know that in your mind, there are a multitude of thoughts and ideas and emotions and fantasies and dreams and all of. I know that. We did a show early on in this series where we looked at some of the data from neuroscientists. It says that you've got 70,000 thoughts a day, the average person, right? Just average human. So that you and I, even if we're not even brilliant in this realm, just average, we're around 70,000 thoughts a day. 70000. That's a lot of thoughts, relatively speaking. If you were sitting around doing 70,000 things repetitively in one day, you'd say that's a lot. I did 70,000 push-ups. That's a lot. I made 70,000 pancakes. That's a lot. So my point is there's a lot going on in just an average, right, human mind. Couple that with the things that make you specifically unique. And yeah, there's many things about you that are brilliant. And I know that in there you're thinking about all kinds of things. And you're lying when you tell me you don't know what you want, specifically. But worse than lying to me, because I'm, in terms of the priority as of who you lie to, I'm very low down the list of why, who cares if you lie to me, really, honestly. The thing that worries me the most, and why I said I'm so selective, not just about the individual coaching and mentoring sessions, I'm also really selective about the organizations I work with, in terms of, I'm going to fly to their headquarters and try to absorb all that I can to create together a collaborative strategy and execution plan for their issues, whether it's engagement and retention, specific management or documentation or whatever. When I'm selective. Part of that's just because I've lived long enough that I have the opportunity to pick and choose, and I also know I can't do everything I want to do. I have to prioritize and pick. And I pick places and people and organizations that I know are committed to surpassing those goals and to excellence. And so I'm there for people who also want me there. And that's largely because, like anybody else in life, as we grow up as children, I couldn't pick and choose, right? You just have whoever you have as your, classmate when you're 9 years old. You get whoever you get, at least in the United States most of the time. Whoever's the teacher is the teacher. Whoever you're hanging out with is in your class. I don't have control over anything. When I start going into the work environment, I do whatever I'm told to by my boss, right? I don't have all this control. So decades into something, you do have more options. And so lying to yourself is the top of the list of things not to do. Because you can lie to other people. Now there's a lot of ethics to that. There's a lot of very unhealthy outcomes to this. So, and we explore this in a lot of different programs. But you know you're lying to them. Lying to yourself is such a destructive thing, because some people will try to convince me that the lie that they've told themselves and they're telling me that it's true, when we all know it isn't. The evidence shows it isn't, but they'll just keep going. Oh, I just have to prove this lie. And the thing is, stop. Why? I know you know what you specifically want. Okay, and what are we talking about by specificity? Okay, so you'll ask people all the time, especially when I'm working with people about career things, right? And they'll say, okay, well, what's your goal? Oh, I want to make a lot of money, and I really want to do a job I enjoy. Okay, that's not specific. When we talk about finance, of course, we have our series in this show, our financial fierceness series. And I'll ask people, what are your financial goals? Well, I just really want to be comfortable. I don't want to have to worry about money. That's not specific. We talk about health, and we do have a pending series that we're going to launch focused on that, our physical health, nutritional health, right, our emotional health. And I'll ask people, what's your goal? My goal is just to be healthy, just to feel good. What does that mean? All of that is garbage. because it's not specific. And because it's not specific, it allows you to set zero goal that's defined. Tell me how you're going to define I'm healthy. Because then people backpedal into these things where they argue. Well, someone would say, well, maybe, if I'm a certain weight, and then you'll get into arguments with people. Well, what weight is all right? What if someone is, 5 feet tall? What if someone is 6'6" tall? What if someone has a small frame and a large frame and all this? What if someone has a certain type of, hormone issue or a thyroid issue or medical issue? What if somebody has a sensitivity or an allergy? And then people want to argue. If you talk about, your body mass index or BMI, people want to argue about that. If you talk about, there's not anything that I could say externally and just sort of plop in your life and say, here's your goal. You should weigh X amount based on this chart, based on your height and your body frame, or you should weigh X range of weight based on your body mass index, or you should weigh. Anything I do externally, people are going to argue with me about. That doesn't apply to me. That's just ridiculous. That number is too low, too high, and they'll tell you what's, why they can't do it and all this kind of stuff. And it's like that for everything in life. No one can externally come and define the goal for you because they're not you. You are the one who knows what really is going on in your mind. You're the one with the 70,000 thoughts a day on average about what? About your world. How you feel? Does your stomach hurt? What does your toe feel like? Is it too hot? Is it too cold? Is it too loud? Are you comfortable? Does your back hurt? Are you sleepy? Are you hungry? What do you dream? What do you feel? What makes you excited? All this kind of stuff. You're the only one in there. And that's all the stuff that goes into defining the goal. I can't do it because I'm not inside of you. You can't do it for me. In so many programs, we discuss these things. Someone else could come, and people have. I've shared anecdotes, right? People come to me and they'll, I'll meet somebody at some event and they'll say, oh, what do you do? A professional type thing, and I'll mention, I work for myself basically, I work for my own little law firm, and then I do work my own little consulting corporate training firm and speaking, and then I teach for my wonderful university, which is one of the world leaders in distributed adult learning, right? And then there'll be somebody else who's like, oh, well, I work at such and such fancy, the biggest law firm in the world. Okay. Of course, that's more impressive than what I do. My firm is small, and it's no one's heard of it at the level they've heard of the most fancy, elite firm in the world that everybody who's a lawyer knows about, or the most fancy consulting firm in the world that's the largest and the biggest and the best brand. Everybody knows that. Not everybody knows me. Of course, it's not anywhere near that. If it was important to me for my goals internally in my head that I have that type of brand recognition for those things that I do, then I would have defined different goals. And if somebody else came along and said those things to me and then said, oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, too bad. That's all you're doing with your work. And I have versions of that from time to time. Less and less, but I still get it sometimes, right? And I'll think to myself, I'm delightedly happy at my work. I love my work, right? I customize my work around interests, and it's fun and exciting. I get to do cool things. And I do get to work with some of the elite brands in the world, when I do my client for on-site corporate education program, or I'm appearing on a television show that I have a contract that's one of the top in the world or whatever. I get a taste of that. Enough for me. I defined what makes me happy, what my specific goal was. Externally, nobody else can do it. So when you lie and say that you don't know, you're lying, because I know you know, because you have 70,000 thoughts a day. And you've been live, just add up how many thoughts that is, because you're a minimum of an adult, right? So you're at least over 18. How many days have you been alive? How many days at the average of 70,000 thoughts a day? How many thoughts is that? Come on. It's garbage to tell me that you don't know specifically, because I know you know. And one of the exercises I do when I work individually with people, sometimes with small groups, we may try some of this when we move into this new uncharted territory of the online programs, because that's going to be a new way of doing it for me, with small workshops and things of that, small seminars and things of that. But we're moving forward, right? But here's what I'll do. I'll ask people. I'll say, look, go write down You got to write it down. So you don't, you can use paper, you can use a tablet, put it on your smartphone, text it to yourself. I don't care how you write, but you need to in some kind of way make it tangible so you can like see it, right? And tell me exactly what your fantasy life is like in the future. This is one of the number one exercises I do for everything from, resume stuff, career goal, finances, because I got to know where we're going. And the easiest way to do it is just to sit and daydream and fantasize about what your total, complete, most perfect life would be like. Literally. So, when I walk people through these, I'm like, okay, so imagine you wake up. Where are you waking up? Are you waking up in your own home? Are you waking up in your, you know, grandmother's home? Are you in a house? Are you on a boat? Are you outdoors? Are you indoors? Are you in a big mansion? Are you in a simple log cabin? Like all of this, because all of this matters. There are all of these. Some of them are imprinted, and we've talked about it in so many of our programs. We integrate, of course, so many different substantive areas. But we've talked a lot about, sociology and psychology and this idea of the ideal self, right? We've had many shows about that. So I'll put, the links on the show page, but make sure you look back through those and revisit what we talked about when we talk about programs, especially about what makes somebody happy. There's so much research that shows happiness to a large extent is how much your life as you experience it, right? When you're awake and in your regular life, like right now, how much this matches sort of your imagined ideal life. And the closer those are, the more congruency there is, then the more content and happy you are. The further those are apart, then the more unhappy you are. And I've way oversimplified this, obviously, because, the constraints of our program, plus the constraints of certainly my own, knowledge with, I have graduate degrees in a lot of these areas or substantive major areas in these things. But, I'm not the world's expert on any one thing. Maybe one day, right? If I could keep working. So the further apart your real life as you experience it is from your imagined life, that's coming from the 70,000 thoughts a day over X number of days you've been alive, that's what's causing the problem, right, with unhappiness, happiness thing. But that's also what's driving this problem with the goals. It makes sense. So in general, it's like this. When I wake up, most of the time, I'd say at this point in my life, probably 98% of the time when I wake up, my wake up matches my fantasy. It's exactly the type, in my fantasy, this is exactly the type of mattress I would be on. I would like to be indoors because I'm sort of an indoor person. So that matches. I'd like to have access to temperature control, and that matches. When I'm at my home, the home or homes that I live in, that I own, then I bought them, right? So they obviously were. I don't buy stuff that I don't like, right? We talk about that when we do sales trading. We talk about some of my techniques, right, to teach you how to really be excellent at sales. I know exactly what I want. Sales in terms of getting what you want as the customer and also as the salesperson, because I'm both, right? And I bought it because I like it. When I go to get a vehicle, I love that vehicle. You know how much time I put into every one of these purchases? And not just the research and, the consumer reports and the safety and the, reliability and all that kind of good stuff, but just my feeling. How do I feel? Does that match my mind of what I feel I should be driving or riding? If I'm riding a motorcycle, and I don't have it, but I'm sure if I ever felt the need for a boat or, whatever, it'd be the same thing, right? Like I think about all this stuff. Does this match how I see myself in my imaginary thing in my head? Because if it does, I'm moving in the good direction for feeling good. If it doesn't, I'm moving in the wrong direction because it'll bug me. If I go and I get something that I don't like, right? A house, a car, a bicycle, whatever. Then every single time I'm on it, it's just going to I'm literally going to think to myself, "Oh, this is not what I wanted. I never wanted to get this in purple. I just can't believe I have this like this." Oh, and it's going to bother me. And it doesn't matter what anybody else, if everybody else was like, "Wow, that's really nice." Doesn't matter because in my head I'm like, "Oh, that's not what I wanted. This is not what I wanted." Why do this then? This is a simple version of our whole show today. The success comes from that you feel you're successful. I've argued in many other shows that this is all arbitrary and meaningless because there's no such thing. And I gave examples a few minutes ago. I go to events, I'll meet people, not where I'm like working, right? So obviously if I was working or being introduced, then that I don't have a lot of these things where people kind of feel sorry for me. But if it's just some sort of, random, charity event or some other community event or some dinner party or something, and I don't really know anyone, I haven't met them, then they do. Oh, where do you work? Oh, and they'll kind of look at me like, oh, poor thing. Now, the truth, as I said earlier, is my version of my fantasy ideal life 98% of the time matches where I am. When I select, because now, like I said, I select clients, I select events. So believe it or not, I've known people who are, professional consultants and speakers, and they're on the road all the time, right? But they don't take responsibility or feel they have the ability to turn down work. So they'll accept stuff they don't want to do, and then they'll wake up and all they'll do is complain, not to the client, but they'll complain away from the client. Oh, I hate this hotel. I hate this place. I don't like this airport. You know what? Then you shouldn't have come to this. You shouldn't have accepted this contract, right? It's one thing to say, I just want it to be better. Now, that's something I do when I'm on an event. We got to make sure the sound works. Let's get everything organized, before the live event and the audience is there. So usually, the night before or whatever, let's do run-throughs. That's just wanting it to be right. But if you really are miserable, like this is not the thing for you, or I've worked with people. Oh, I'm away from my granddaughter today. I'm so sad. Well, then why did you take this gig? If it was more important to be around your granddaughter on her special day from Girl Scouts or whatever, like you should have done that instead, right? And I'm not talking about somebody starting out who is working their way up. I'm talking about somebody who's been doing something for 30 years. They should have had a strategy to get to a point where they could turn stuff down, or they didn't feel like they had to say yes to everything, because that makes you feel, at some point it'll get you in a point where you feel conflicted. You're like, you don't want to really be there. You feel like you have to, which leads people to unhappiness. With your goals, whether it's a little goal or a big goal, you got to define it. You got to be specific, and you cannot play this lying game of, well, let somebody else define it. What does the weight chart say? What does the doctor say? What do my friends say? What does my spouse say? None of that is going to work. First of all, there are scientific measurements that we can't agree on to a certain degree, right? Because there's somebody who would be in horrible condition, right? Undernourished intentionally. So not somebody who was unable, but, really harming themselves, and then will lie and be like, I'm fine. No, you're not, right? You literally have these very serious ramifications of these choices to be undernourished that are hurting your organs in your body, right? And so that's one thing. And sometimes people need special treatment for the nutrition and the psychological part, right? Because sometimes this thing where we're our ideal version in our head and real life, they don't match, but the thing in our head's not healthy, right? And that's where people have, body dysmorphia and all these types of things. That's where in your head you think something, but what you're thinking isn't even real, right? It may be like a toy doll or something. Like if a human looked like that, they'd be dead, right? But people sometimes have things where they got the wrong idea planted in their head. But in terms of most of us, assuming that it's a healthy, rational vision, then we need to pay attention to it. So if you're somebody who loves to be outdoors and you're cooped up all day indoors in the office all day, you're going to be miserable. I don't care how much money you make. I don't care how fancy it is. I don't care what everybody else tells you. It's not your thing. It doesn't match your version of yourself, as long as that, was a healthy version. You want to be outdoors. So go do that. Don't drop your job and, get evicted, today, but let's get the strategy and execute so we can move toward and surpass that goal of getting you where you need to be. You're not going to be successful because this doesn't match you inside. The key is only you know what's inside. And you can lie to other people. Like I said, that's low on the priority list, lying to other people, strangers, people that you work with, and then you move up the list to people that are in your community of caring, and then people that are the closest to you, that you love and care about the most. So of course, lying to them is more destructive. But you can do it, and people get away with this all the time. The person it really hurts is you. Because a lot of these lies, only you know it's a lie, right? If you're somebody that really just yearns to be outdoors and you lied and told everybody you're happy in the office, unless that there's somebody that you've told or they've been around you before when you used to tell people your real truth that you like to be outside, they won't even know it's a lie. They'll know that you're unhappy. They'll know that you don't seem, the most contented person. But they don't know exactly what the cause is. Only you do. And that's why when we talk about being specific, look, this is your life, and I'm going to argue it's your right and responsibility to step up and take care of yourself. It's in your mind. You already know. And as you've lived through life, you've experienced different stuff, right? You've been outside, you've been indoors. You know you like high heights. You like to be high up in big tall buildings. You know you don't like high rises at all. You know that you like to eat, broccoli. You know you don't love broccoli. You know all this stuff. A lot of it you just learn by doing it. That's what, growing up. That's what life. That's why we get to the beauty and wonder of living to adulthood is you have that accumulated knowledge of yourself, and then you get to continue to have new adventures and learn about the world. But you have to take responsibility to orient yourself toward what's your internal, definition of what works for you. And when you lie to other people, yeah, you can do it all the time because they don't know what the truth is because they're not inside your head, but they will know something's not right. They won't know exactly what it is, but they'll feel it because your behavior. Families are destroyed by this, right? As I've shared in other programs, when I used to do family law cases as a lawyer, this is, when people say that people argue and get divorced about money, that's the number one thing. It's not about money itself. It's about this. It's about the specificity of what people expected. Because so people will be vague, right? Before they get married. Oh yeah, I just want to be comfortable, and they both say the same thing, and they're both like, yeah, we're just great. We're just both going to be comfortable. Great marriage. And neither of them are lying, but they were not specific. So when one person said they wanted to be comfortable based on their life experience and their internal dialogue, what they meant was they wanted to live in a 1,200 square foot home with 2 bedrooms that was on several acres in the country where they could have wild life outdoors and also have some domesticated animals, and it would maybe be like a log cabin. What they meant. The other person heard comfortable, financially comfortable. What they meant was, I want to live in the city, and I want to live in a 3,000 square foot modern home with all the newest, appliances and fanciest amenities. And because they weren't specific, marriages break up over this. Families break up over this. Friendships break up. Jobs, right, are a disaster. Because when the person's in the interview and they both again lie, right? So the person that's being interviewed for the job says, yeah, I just always wanted to work at, this firm is a great opportunity, and I'm a people person, and I'm a team player, and I would just, I know I would be a huge asset to the organization, right? And then the employer says, okay, great, here's the salary range. Is that something that meets your expectations? And then the applicant lies. And what they'll lie for all kind of reasons, right? Sometimes they'll lie, and then they'll later say, well, yeah, I was broke, right? Like I needed money now. So I'll tell those people anything that they wanted to hear because I was trying to figure out how I was going to pay my rent next week. So the job pays, $2,500 US a month, right? But the person is thinking, oh, $2,500 in my hand right now, that's a good thing. Are they thinking I want to make $2,500 for the next 10 years? No. And then they get the job, and then after their immediate financial needs are met, then they're angry because they're feeling like, well, where's next? My vision of myself was that I was going to be making, 5,000 US dollars a month at some point. And there's no upward mobility here. And every time I do a good job at the end of the year, they tell me I'll get a 1% raise. That's not moving me anywhere near where I want to be at anywhere near the time I want. And they get mad. But the problem is they weren't specific. Don't lie to me, which really, who cares? I'm just a stand-in for other people who who aren't in your closest circle of community of caring. But hopefully I'm somewhat tangentially in there, right? We're working together. But don't lie to yourself. Look, you got to be specific. And it's like this with all of this. It's like, except for things that are damaging, that are empirically, damaging, right? Undernutrition, oversaturation, right, of food, calories, and not healthy exercise. But once we get away from those extremes, people have their own version of what they're comfortable with. I've shared on some programs, and I'm sure I'll share more in those new series. One of my challenges in life, I tend to have this version of myself when even when I get to a point where really seriously, right, where I'm getting to a point where, hey, I need to get back on my regular, walk-in and nutrition that I normally do, and usually something emotionally I'll eat excessive food quantities. It's one of these really destructive things that I do, right? When I'm under a lot of stress or something really awful happens, and it's mostly bread related, like a lot of carbs. I like breads, not pasta, not really, just mostly just bread. That's really it. So anyway, it's supposed to be sweet bread, right? Croissants and donuts. Okay, so I'll know, and even when I could get on the scale and see, oh my goodness, I'll still look in the mirror and think to myself, you look good. I'll see like, oh, it looks like maybe you're a little, you know, uh, puffier than normal because you've been eating this stuff, right? And of course, I'm getting these spikes in my sort of metabolism and everything because I'm eating. You can eat all things in moderation, right? But I'm excessively eating, and I know it hurts me in many ways, right? But I'll still look in the mirror and think to myself, yeah, I see that, yeah, I really need to, deal with that, but I still look good, right? Like that's so that's part of that thing we talked about earlier, where I'm getting to the unhealthy part, and so what I do for the health thing, especially, is like I get on that schedule, and it's like you're gonna get on that scale, and you're gonna do it, if not daily, almost every day, because that's a way to stop the lie. Right? It's just a way. And the other thing is, I know how much I enjoy the stress relief from my walk and my exercise. I know that it makes me feel better. It helps with my emotions and everything. So when I miss it, and then I have this excessive calories in short amounts of time, it hurts me in so many ways, right? So come on. But I have to force myself to say, hey, look, you're going to get on that scale. Because if I don't do that, I'll just look in the mirror and be like, yeah, well, I have to wear some other clothes because I know that one really cute outfit might not, fit comfortably today, but I look fine. That's the lie I'll tell myself. So I have to put in ways to keep myself focused by saying, first of all, you enjoy your exercise. Honestly, the emotional, the endorphins and the sort of they call it the runner's high, even though I don't really run that much. But my exercise, I feel better. And so I need that. I really do. To stay healthy. So the lies, very destructive. So a specific thing would be like I do to myself is I know, hey, look, if you're between this weight and this weight, right, and you're doing your exercise, whatever, you're 4 days a week, you're good, right? And you still always have to monitor your nutrition. No one needs to go out and eat 6 boxes of cookies. And I've actually not done that because cookies aren't really the thing, right? It's more bread. But, that's just not healthy for anybody. A little kid or a 100-year-old person, like all things in moderation, right? So I'll know that specific range and I'll know it. And I just state, and then I say when I get on my scale, okay, I'm in that range, or looks like what's been going on? But I've been eating healthy, but not been what's been going on, and then I'll see that and I'll stay focused so I stay in that range. And it's the same thing with anything else. With money, you got to be really specific. It's one of the things when I do the individual work with somebody about their career strategy. If you want to make money, you got to tell me how much. Do you want to make $250,000 a year? Do you want to make $25,000 a year? Do you want to make $25 million a year? So I need to know how much so we can work backwards from there to come up with a strategy. You can't vaguely tell me you just want to be successful, because that means $25,000 a year to some people, US, it means $250,000 a year to some people, and it means $25 million to other people, right? If you tell me you're unhappy, that's a really good thing, because we can get somebody from unhappy to happy by working on having this, congruence between what they see themselves in their mind, what they should be in their mind doing, and what they are. And let's work through and see what we need to do. How much money you want to make? Okay, what kind of skills do you have? We do the skill inventory. We've talked about in other programs, right? When we talk about your resume and jobs, you have to go through and look at every single thing you can do and what that type of skill could be used for in a job, in a professional market. Writing, speaking, whatever. And we work back through that, and then we look and ask what could you do to make money off of this? Is there some sort of work you can do online as a contractor, just right now, sign up for some service? Is there something you can do part-time in your local community? Is there something that you need to go back and get a certification or skill for? Is there something that you need to, start rewriting your resume, but the current skills you have, you're ready to go get a full-time job? I mean, these are the things I will work with, and I do work with people, and this is how I live my own life. But I have to specifically know. So when you know, and I believe you know, right? Because come on, 70,000 thoughts a day for all these days you've been alive, you know. The other question I get to with people is then I know you know, so what is it that's stopping you from telling the truth? Are you scared of what other people will think of you? Do you think that if other people knew your goals, if you said to other people, well, my goal is that I want to be uh, out on the sea. I just love the ocean. And my real goal is I'd like to live in a houseboat. Okay. But your concern is that, maybe you told somebody this when you were, you know, younger and they laughed at you or they told you you're an idiot or that was the stupidest thing you ever heard of. And then because of that, you don't ever tell anybody anymore. Well, my answer is you told the wrong person, right? Everything that people do, somebody somewhere laughed. I just told in this show several different anecdotes where people sort of sometimes actually I was going to say they people actually do sort of laugh at me right to this day. Like, oh, she doesn't work at a big fancy law firm. Oh, so bad for her. She doesn't work at a big fancy consulting firm. Bad for her. So, okay. I love my work. I really do. My life, like I said, 98% of the time it matches. The 2% of the time it doesn't match, or if I don't feel well, like I'm physically sick or something, or I'm ill, something bad has happened, right? Some horrible thing to someone, to me, or someone in my community of caring, or someone I care about, or just in our world. Sometimes something awful's happened in our world, and it's just so heavy and so awful. No one can, I think, wake up and feel good. And then sometimes, even though I have thought that I made a good decision, it turns out you go visit, somebody for work or as social, and you realize this isn't what I thought it would be. This hotel isn't what they said, right? Okay, so that's like the 2%. So something bad happens, or I'm ill, you know, um, and or something didn't turn out like exactly like you thought it would be, or even close to it, right? Like, um, you get to, I'm in a hotel and it's like there's no toilet in the hotel room. No, it's a shared toilet. That's the kind of thing in modern times at my age. Yeah, I'm usually not like super psyched about that. But it just means I need to have more planning. There's a couple of shows I'd ask you to revisit when you work through this. Because the deal is, you got to go write down, like I said earlier, write it down. If you're scared other people will laugh at you, then don't show it to anybody. you know Write it down in invisible ink if you have to, but you need to write it down somewhere where only you can access it, so you can go back and see it and you can use it to discipline yourself, right? So if you're not comfortable telling anybody else, then just tell me. I mean, email me. I won't tell anyone. um, but you gotta, the thing they talk about accountability partners, and they talk about this in all different areas, everything from people overcoming, um, addictions and really difficult things in life, to people who are in elite, professional programs. I'll be your mentor and accountability partner. So it's the gamut of things, right? But it's all about having some external entity to sort of say, here's my secret goal I'm sharing with you, right? And now you can together we can help support each other on this. It's like using a human, sort of like how I said, I use the scale, because that scale, it's not working. That's the number, right? So that's an accountability partner. That's not a person. And when you tell another person, then if they do their job as an accountability partner, then they're gonna say, hey, I thought we were working on getting those cover letters rewritten and submitted to at least 100 jobs, so that we could see about moving forward with some of these other opportunities, right? And they're just like that scale. I get mad sometimes and I think, oh, scale, that number, what? But I know, because I set it up. Like, I'm the one who wants this, because I know specificity is what makes me have a chance at surpassing my goals. No specificity, no hope. I'm going to be like those people in that, hypothetical bad marriage where we're both angry at each other. I thought you wanted to live in a log cabin in the country. I thought we were living in the city. What? That's because we weren't specific. So when you have the accountability partner, then I'm going to ask ahead of time, just like me, I don't get mad at the scale, right? Seriously. I don't. Sometimes I'm like, I get mad at myself, like, oh, come on. But I don't get mad at the scale. The scale's trying to help me. It's a tool. Your accountability partner's trying to help you. And I know that I've been in both positions. I've had times in my life where there was someone who was, an accountability person for me, it's usually what your friends and loved ones do, right? They're the ones that are there to tell you, hey, wait a minute, what are you doing? Yeah, it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable when you're faced with that. But the mature person knows that we are doing this because we desire better. We're chasing contentment. We're chasing whatever it means to be successful, which I'm interpreting as I'm, not unhappy. So that moment of uncomfortableness is the reality of, look, this isn't what you said your goal was. You're doing stuff that's not helping you with the goal, or it's taking you further away from the goal. If you find yourself with an accountability partner and then you lash out at them, and this is what happens with people who aren't serious about their own lives, meaning, I said earlier, I pick the organization and pick the client because I can't look. No one else can do it for us. No one else is going to come in my mind and do my 70,000 thoughts a day and listen to all the stuff about if my stomach hurt or my foot hurt or, what my favorite movie is or what's the name of that song again. No one else is going to sit through all of that because they can't, A, and B, even if they could, why would they? They have their own 70,000 thoughts a day to deal with their own stuff. This is my right and responsibility. And I have to take all this stuff and shape and know what's right for me. If I went out and chased prestige, and prestige didn't make me happy, like working at a big fancy place, and I knew that would make me happy, right? Then that would be my fault. I couldn't blame somebody else and say, well, everyone else had to go work here and I did, and now I'm unhappy. Look, that's my fault. Because I know that's not the kind of, I like the kind of flexibility that I have with smaller organizations, with more, innovative opportunities. I like that. And so I know what in my head's important. It's not important to me at all that other people necessarily would, care or would think that when I name, my own little firms that it matters. That doesn't matter. If it did, then I wouldn't do this. I'd do something else. That's the beauty of all of this. That's why it's so cool and why it's so unique. It's your life. So if you don't care about living in a log cabin and you meet somebody else and they're like, oh, you don't live in a log cabin? If that doesn't matter to you, you'll be like, no, I don't live in a log cabin. And it's not going to bother you at all because it wasn't even on your list. Right? When you do your imaginary thing and the exercise where you lay, I lay usually, or you could sit, or stand. It really doesn't matter. Like, you could do it walking. Honestly, you just think, right? Where you go into your mind, you're like, when I wake up, what will I be? What kind of, where am I? Indoor, outdoor? What kind of, structure am I in? And then you work through your whole day in that exercise. So when I work, what kind of work am I doing? Am I with a whole bunch of other people? Am I by myself? Am I at a big fancy office? Am I at my house? Am I indoors? I make people walk through that whole exercise, and this is very time consuming, so you can see, because we have to plan out this whole thing so that I can figure out where we're going. And the really cool thing again is, as you do this, you're gonna discard a whole bunch of stuff that doesn't matter to you at all, and that's why it doesn't stress you out or bother you at all. When other people come and talk about stuff that's in their mind important, but it's not in your ideal version of yourself, then there's no problem. Like, you're like, what? So I don't live in a log cabin, so what? Right? If that was important to me, living in a log cabin, I'd be living in a log cabin, or I'd have a plan and I'd be working on to get there. And somebody else comes, and even people today, like I said, will make fun of me or something. It doesn't bother me at all because the stuff that they're making fun of me about is about their life and their ideal version. It's nothing to do with me. If it did, I'd be doing that. I do the stuff that meets my ideal version. Hence, my life is more content, and mostly 98% of the time, pretty cool. Other people are just using these interactions, expressing what their own yearnings and their own cravings are, and that's about them. It's not about me. It doesn't bother me at all. And so that's because I'm doing my path, and you're doing your path. When you're specific, yeah, it's much easier to surpass your goal because you had it written down like a finish line, right? So some of the other shows I said to revisit that I also listed on our Stone of Solutions on CourtneyAnderson.com, episode 207. Episode 207, that show was entitled Ask for What You Want and Be Prepared to Get It, right? That was another one of our Joyful Art of Business shows, and that link is there on our show page. I also asked you to revisit episode Ooh, episode 44. Wow, that's a while ago, right? We're now in almost 100, almost 200 episodes over that. Oh my gosh. Episode 44 was, how am I supposed to follow my passion when I don't know what it is? And that was in our help situation spotlight. That was episode 44. Also, episode 148. Episode 148 was, you get no more out of life than you demand. That's a quote from Edith Heslop, who was my grandmother, my paternal grandmother. Wonderful, wonderful woman. And also, episode 70. Episode 70 was, I never intended to become a run-of-the-mill person. And that's a quote by Barbara Jordan, who was a legislator and leader from the state of Texas, and then also on the national level. So that was episode 70. Because as you can see by those show titles, it's touching on many of the things we talked about here that are the obstacle. When somebody says, oh, I don't know what I specifically want, that's a lie. So then when you go through your individual exercise, you know how you want to live, what your expectation is, what it looks like to you, right? How you wake up, where you work, what kind of people you're around, what kind of work you do, right? Some people love travel because it makes them, excited. Some people hate it. You know all this stuff. So this is all going into your crafting of your specific goals. How much money, within your healthy, by scientifically determined experts, within that healthy range, where are you? And be comfortable. And here's the deal, no matter what you do, there's always going to be the possibility and the probability of someone or some groups of people saying something nasty. People who are small size people get that. I used to get that a lot. Oh, I just barely see how you can even lift that. I mean, you're just so small. You could blow away. Really? Like I can control. Right? Or when I've been larger, right? Ooh, my goodness. Wow. No matter how much money you make, there's somebody with that nasty, really? So that's why none of that matters. That's why it's not a part of this. This is all internal. The exercise is you in your own head. And then you have to be very mature about this. And as you work with people, you got to be honest. You know what kind of things make you happy in a work situation. You know what doesn't. And you need to take responsibility for that. Don't lie to somebody and say, oh yeah, this is my dream. And it isn't. It's the same thing with your personal relationships, right? You know what your expectations are. You got to share that specifically with other people. And then find other people that share similar ideas or are willing to compromise happily. Right? So somebody might say, hey, I want to live in a log cabin out in the country in a lot of land with a lot of, animals. And then somebody else says, I wanted to live in the country, but I didn't want a log cabin. But I did want a lot of animals. So a compromise might be they're in the country, they both have a lot of animals, both of them wanted that, and then maybe they compromise. Maybe it's like partially log cabin and partially, brick. I don't know, whatever. So that's reasonable. It's not reasonable where one person is like, hey, I wanted to live out in the country on a whole bunch of land with a bunch of animals, and the other person is like, I wanted to live in the city, in a high rise. Okay, we're so far apart on this isn't probably going to work. And especially if that's a priority for both people. If one of the people is like, I never even really care. I don't even really care where I live. I like the country. I like the high rise. But what's really important to me is that I have, the ability to have my telescope and do my stargazing. Okay. So they may be able to do in either place. But you and I have to go through and do these exercises. And you have to keep doing tune-ups. I think just, maybe 2 days ago. First thing, second or third thing I did was I sat and I did one of these exercises. What would be my ideal day? What would my ideal life look like? Because, it changes. And you also have to stay vigilant. Right? This is an ongoing practice. And then once we do all of this, we have to be able to communicate to other people what it is that we've prioritized that's really important to us. And you got to hold that and be assertive about it so you don't get in one of these situations where, you claim how unhappy you are because you're stuck out in a big high rise in the city and you really wanted to be, in the country and you can't believe you've had to do this for 30 years. First of all, you didn't have to. And second of all, you should have told the other person earlier in a way that they understood, right? So people say, I did tell them. No, in a way they understood meant a consequence. Like, I'm not going to do this. Or we're going to have a real understanding of how we're going to live. And if we can't come to an agreement, then I'm not going to sacrifice my happiness for 30 years. But people do that and then they want to play martyr. Well, no, that's not healthy and it's not fair. And I want to close on this. So when you look in the Stone of Solutions on CourtneyAnderson.com for this episode, and of course I always also do ask wherever you find our program around the world, on iTunes or any of our other distribution partners, Libsyn or Spreaker or Stitcher or iHeartRadio or anywhere in the world, please leave ratings and reviews so that we'll continue to broaden the people that are able to access our message, and it's imperative that's one of the mechanisms apparently that we need to do. I also want to mention I am on Twitter. I'm at Zealous Business, and one of the items on our Stone of Solutions for this program was from Harvard Business Review, an article from Harvard Business Review. So it's not just me randomly making up my own useless anecdotes, or not entirely. I'm kidding. Okay, so here's an article. The link is on the show page, right? And so the article is 9 things successful people do differently. That's perfect. We're talking about success in our show. This is Harvard. I don't think anyone could debate that that's not one of the leading institutions in the world in higher education, and certainly in business. And so 9 things successful people do differently. We're interested, right? This dovetails in exactly what we've been teaching and sharing. All right, number 1 on the list. Okay, so I'm assuming that the list is weighted by priority, just making that assumption. Number 1 on the list, get specific. Wow, look at that. And yes, I have these topics. This one specifically I had, and then I went out and went to see what I found that I thought might be some credible information to include in our show notes. And then I found it, so I didn't build it around it. I didn't build the show after I saw this. I mean, I've been teaching this for decades because it's in all different types of business school content. It's the idea of smart goals, right? That they're measurable, they're specific. The reason you hear this thing over and over again is because it's one of these fundamental issues that, like I said, we've talked about finance, we've talked about getting the job you want, we've talked about your relationships and marriage. We've talked about families. We've talked about your health. We've talked about career stuff. We've touched on all the sort of big areas of life, because this is what it comes down to. How much do you feel that your life matches what you think it should? All right, so from that article, it said, number 1, get specific, and then it went on to say, when you set yourself a goal, try to be as specific as possible. Lose 5 pounds is a better goal than lose some weight. Exactly. That's what we talked about earlier. I gave my examples of being on the scale. Once you confirm with your doctor, based on your body and your specific makeup, what is the healthy range for you, right? Okay. And then, pick where in that range you're most comfortable, and then, just make sure you're checking in that you're staying there. All right. Because it gives you a clear idea of what success looks like. That's what I was saying. Like I said, somebody says, I just want to be comfortable when we're married. They mean they want to live in the country in a log house, a whole bunch of animals. Somebody else means they want to live in the city in a high rise with no animals. That's a big deal, right? This is from the article. Knowing exactly what you want to achieve keeps you motivated until you get there. We talked about motivation. And then this article says, also think about the specific actions that need to be taken to reach your goal. Just promising you'll eat less or sleep more is too vague. Be clear and precise. I'll be in bed by 10 p.m. on weeknights. It leaves no room for doubt about what you need to do and whether or not you've actually done it. And again, this is all, I use this analogy in programs because this works, right? If you will not specifically name, claim, and define your future, who will? And the analogy is, your goal is like a map destination, right? So it's like pulling out a map and being like, I'm going there. I'm going to the aquarium in Seattle on whatever street, right? That's where I'm going. The really cool thing about once you have the destination, then the easy part is just figuring out how you're going to get there. What road we're going to take, how long we're going to drive each day. And then it's easy because I know where I'm going. Now I may have to change things. I might be driving down a road. Uh-oh, that road's closed. Okay, well, I need to have an alternative plan. But I will get there because I know where I'm going. When you sit around and play these games where you lie to yourself and you lie to other people and you say, I don't know what I know. I don't know what I want. Then you're like a person just sitting around with a map and there's no destination on it. And then you sit around and complain you can't get anywhere. And it's like, well, how could you? You don't even have a place to find. And I've said in other shows, it's like getting in a car, you know, or any, or on a train. It's like, where are you going? I don't know. Well, then how are you going to get anywhere? You're just going to drive that car until it runs out of energy and can't go any further? You're just going to ride that train until it ends its, route, and then what? Like, come on. It's like wandering around aimlessly. Just like, I don't know. It sounds kind of maybe dramatic, but honestly, that's what people do. And then they complain about how unhappy they are, and it's like, well, yeah, no wonder you're unhappy. Who wouldn't be, right? You're brilliant. I said that earlier. You have 70,000 thoughts a day, and you have so many other things about you that are just amazing. And yet, instead of you getting that energy and excitement and the thrill of life, of like, wow, I'm getting to my goal, or I met that little goal, and I'm on the path of this other one, or maybe I changed my mind about this other thing. You're just standing around, sort of lost. I don't know. And I'm arguing that you're the key. You're the only one that can do this and fix it. So just do your exercises and start to write down and define for yourself what it looks like, and then be honest. All these other lies people tell themselves, well, I can compromise and change. Compromise is, hey, like I said earlier, they both want to be in the country, but one wanted log and the other one said they had to have some brick. Well, you can compromise on that. Compromise isn't, I want to be CEO of a global multinational company, and, I'm an entry-level worker and I have no skills and no path to get to the CEO. That's so far apart. So then we have to figure out what we want to change. And probably what we're going to want to change is to move toward getting some additional skills so that you can move toward that goal. You may move toward the goal CEO and get somewhere else in life and realize, oh, I'm happy here as, assistant manager. But at least you're different than where you were when you started. But the thing that people, I think, really do that's so awful is they'll pretend like they're not who they are. If the truth is, you really want to be in the country, yeah, you could compromise on, does it have to be log, all of it. You can compromise on exactly how many, turkeys you have or goats you have or whatever. But the compromise on the core issue itself, all of it, where you're not anywhere with any animals and you're not even in the country, it's too much. If you have some aspiration to, manage and supervise, you want to sort of be in charge, then some level of that is getting you where you're, toward your ultimate goal. And you can compromise on a little of it. It might turn out that once you start doing it, you realize I don't necessarily want to be CEO, or you may think when you start doing it and managing, you think, oh, I definitely need to be CEO. I maybe need to be chairman of the board. I wasn't aiming high enough, right? Like, I need to start my own business, whatever. The core thing of I want to lead, I want to be in charge is important. It's really important. And you can't erase that or fix that. And this other part of where people are the opposite, right? They really don't want to do that. And I like project management. I like organizational development. I like working with a team of people internally in my organizations. People I work with, my agent I've been with over a decade, and most people I work with for a long period of time. Because they're awesome, and I'm so grateful, and it's so wonderful. I wouldn't be happy in a huge organization with just so many people and so many numbers of people that I couldn't even really personally get to understand their work ethics and know them individually. If I'm managing 50,000 people, do I know all of them the way that I like to? So what I'm saying is we can compromise within the range of the goal destination. We're not going to compromise on and try to erase ourselves and think, well, I'll just make it work, right? This is a great person. I'd love for them to be my spouse. I'll just make it work. You don't, because it'll be short term. It's like that job analogy I gave earlier. Somebody's broke, so they take the job for the $2,000, $2,500 a month because they need that money right then. So it does make them feel good in the short term because they needed it and it worked, right? But it's not going to be like a 30-year solution, because that wasn't the end goal that they had. That was just like a short-term means to an end. Right? And it's the same thing with these other things in life. You gotta be responsible enough to again name, claim, and define you, and then say to other people, that's not who I am. So if somebody else comes along, you think, oh, that's a great person, I love to be my spouse, and then they say, well, we're going to go live on a boat. Most of the time we're going to be, in the ocean on this really, on a relatively small boat. And you think to yourself, I don't want to live on a boat. Then you need to say that. Seriously, because all the stuff that you're thinking short term, oh, it's so great. It's not going to be great when you're out there on a boat and you're miserable. Because especially when you care about somebody and you're hurting them by being unhappy, because they remember their community of caring, your happiness is their happiness. So you're stuck on a boat with somebody and they really care about you, love you, and all you do is unhappy. And then you put them in a situation where they're forced, right? People say, well, we should just leave the boat. They want me to be happy. We have to go to the boat. Here's the thing. The boat thing makes them happy too. That's why they told you that up front. So now you tell somebody you choose between two things that make you really happy. Seriously? It's cruel. And it could all be avoided, right? By us taking responsibility and saying to somebody, you know what? You do seem fantastic and super awesome. If I was somebody who was going to be a boat person, this would work. Yet I am not. And you are honestly telling me that you're not somebody who's a land person, and I really am a land person. And I mean, you really, not like you want to go on a boat on the weekends or every once in a while with your friends or whatever. You mean you want to live on it, like you want to be on all. That we can't compromise. If it was somebody who said, you know what, I do love the boat, but I like land, so I'll just go ahead and have my boat, and I'll do that at fun time, on my own, and then that can work. But they both have to be responsible enough to tell other people, here's who I am. Now, within who you are, there is room, right? Room to negotiate. If we both want to be in the country, again, maybe we have a little log cabin, some log, some brick, whatever. Like, there's some room. But but some of these things are so far apart. You're being cruel to yourself mostly, which is awful, but you also bring other people into your world. I think you're cruel to them. Right? Because then you end up that person say, well, I never wanted to manage this company anyway. I didn't want to do this. I just did this because, they gave me a job. I didn't even like it here. Then what are you doing? This is your life. Somebody else would have loved managing that company and been, a wonderful motivator, high energy and engaged. And here you are just, going around complaining all the time. And it's not because anything's wrong with that job or being manager there. It's just like it's not your thing. But you're the one who's responsible for your thing. You got to define what your thing is, and then you have to take the responsibility. And it's also really fun, too, of the strategy and the execution of moving toward your thing. Most of the time, even when you're just moving toward your thing, even if you're not actually fully there yet, it's still more fun because you're like moving toward it, right? That living the dream part. It's only when you lie to yourself and then you're immature and you refuse to take responsibility for yourself, and then you want to go and just complain to everybody else how horrible and unhappy you are and how awful everything is, and none of that is anybody else's choice or responsibility. It's yours. But that's not us. But we know those people exist, and that's why we talk about that, because it's a consequence if we don't take responsibility. This stuff is all really easy, fun, free, right? Just go in your own mind. Ask yourself in your mind, what would my life be like if it was my ideal, perfect version? And then just start coming up with that. And don't be embarrassed. Don't worry about anything. It's your dream, your life. And then let's start moving toward what we can do to strategize and then execute. If I can be part of that as an accountability partner or role or in any way, then that's what we're going to do. Let's do it. So get out there, be specific, and be successful. Thank you for joining me.